Hi, I'm Caroline Mitchell, Canine Behaviourist at Good Doggy. So some people will be familiar with the spoon theory. For people that have chronic illness or those that struggle with their mental health, those people will know what it feels like to have a reduced amount of physical and emotional energy to complete tasks through the day. So in 2003, a lady called Christine Miserandino used spoons to describe how lupus affected her. Basically, the way the theory works is that we only have a certain amount of energy in a day. So this is our spoons. Our spoons represent how much energy we have to do what we need to do. Every activity that we attempt costs us a spoon, or many spoons, depending on what the activity actually is. So, for example, maybe we start the day with 10 spoons. The physical act of getting out of bed in the morning might cost 1 spoon. Having a shower might be another spoon. Making breakfast could cost us a spoon. Getting dressed could cost us a spoon. So because we only have a very limited number of spoons available, when we run out of spoons, that's not good. In this scenario, if we started with 10, we've already used 4. So we only have 6 left now to manage the rest of our day. So if we've got a very demanding job or kids to look after or dogs to walk, that kind of stuff, then we need to be careful about how we allocate the rest of our spoons. This is important. For people that don't have mental health or physical health needs, we probably have enough spoons to get us through to the end of the day. We cover most of the important activities. But when people suffer with depression and anxiety in particular, but people that have illnesses and pain, they start off the day with a lot less spoons available to them. So when somebody's feeling depressed, this would feel like, getting out of bed might be quite challenging for them. If you've got a meeting coming up later in the day, you might need help and things like that. So the spoon theory basically just is a very visual way of showing us how much we have available to us in the day, and it allows us to kind of figure out how to allocate our resources when we're not feeling great. So it got me thinking about this theory. And I started to wonder about maybe whether this actually existed in dogs. People don't talk about it existing in dogs, but dogs do suffer with anxiety and depression and things like that. And they also suffer with chronic illness too. My interest is mostly in the mental health. So I'm focusing here on anxiety and how that could affect them. So in particular, I am wondering about whether this kind of spoon theory, this limited amount of energy and resources to achieve stuff through the day, could help us explain unpredictable and inconsistent behaviour in our dogs. If we imagine that our dogs also have a fixed number of spoons, maybe they're suffering with some pain or anxiety or other behavioural issues, they would start off with a small amount of spoons. So let's say in the morning they wake up just like us and they've got 10 spoons for the day. It might cost them 1 to go for a walk. Maybe it costs them another 1 to eat their food. Meeting other dogs may cost them spoons. Meeting people could cost them spoons. Even responding to passers-by and visitors and things like that, in the garden, when somebody comes past the garden and they have to respond to that, they run to the fence, they're barking, maybe they want to do some scent marking, mark the garden, guard the exits and entrances, somebody new come into the house. There are lots and lots of things that could happen to a dog in their day that actually might cost them a spoon. What about teaching them a new trick or completing a puzzle? Maybe they have to figure out a novel object that you've brought home. Perhaps you've put the Christmas tree up and they have to figure out, what is this Christmas tree? I've never seen one before. Perhaps they've got a brand new harness. Even resisting temptation might cost them a spoon. So maybe you've left food on the table and you've gone off to the bathroom, you've come back. If they had a spoon left available, they might have been able to resist that temptation. But if they ran out of spoons an hour ago, then they might not be able to resist taking that food anymore. Maybe they're teething and they're trying to resist chewing a table leg, or, you know, they're dealing with that kind of pain. They're holding in a pee. And even just being at home alone might actually be costing them in spoons. Being by themselves, trying to manage their own anxiety, trying to stay calm, trying to feel safe, all of those kinds of things actually could cost them in spoons. So I think that just like people, some dogs have loads of spoons. They have a brilliant day. They've got plenty of energy, mental and physical energy to complete all the tasks they need. They get regular naps during the day, and they get to the end of the day and they feel fine and they've had a great time. For others though, this is more of a challenge. And for us, this is a problem because actually we don't really know what's going on inside. We don't know how many spoons they start their day with. We don't know what they're feeling and what they're going through and what is challenging to them. When they talk about mental health spoons for people, when you wake up in the morning, you know how you feel. So you know roughly how many spoons you're going to have for the whole day. But our dogs aren't able to communicate that to us specifically. So we have to really learn how to advocate for them. We have to know what's going on. So if you feel like your dog is suffering with inconsistent behavior, and you think that actually maybe this could be appropriate for them, maybe they are running out of spoons and you're starting to wonder whether this is actually something that's happening for your dog and explains a lot of their behavior, then the first thing to do is check for pain, because this is a really easy one to check for. Go to your vet, explain to them you're seeing inconsistent behavior with your dog and you want to do a pain profile to make sure that there's nothing underlying in there, nothing that doesn't have to be obvious. Your dog doesn't have to be limping for them to be in pain. We don't have to limp for us to have a sore leg, you know. So we need to search for it. Our dog will not always tell us when they're feeling in pain and sore and things. So we have to actually find a way to look for that. So do a pain profile with your vet and hopefully there'll be nothing there. But if there is, you can work on that. So that will help your dog to actually be able to achieve more during the day, because those spoons are not being used up just on feeling sore. We can take into consideration things like growing pains. Our dogs, as they grow when they're little, will have growing pains, and this can affect them. So you could check for that too. Even things like indigestion can cause a problem. When you're feeling indigestion, you're feeling uncomfortable and you're not able to do as much stuff as you would. You might be grumpy, it might make you more tired, it might make you feel different. So all these things we can just keep an eye out for. Anxious dogs have less spoons. If your dog is just genuinely anxious all the time, if they suffer things like separation anxiety, if they are anxious when they're on their walks, if they're anxious when you have visitors, if they're anxious when people pass your house, that dog will have less spoons. So they'll run out earlier in the day and you'll see their behavior will change. Teenage dogs have less spoons. Teenage dogs lose a lot of resilience, go through a fear stage, their hormones are affecting them. And some teenagers get up in the morning and they just can't really manage anything. So they've maybe used all their spoons up just by getting out of bed in the morning. So teenagers have less resources emotionally for their day, and rescue dogs do too. Rescue dogs are just like our anxious dogs. They will use all of their resources up very, very quickly. They're not just anxious about things outside their house. They're also anxious about you and about your routine and about your house and about new smells and other pets. When a rescue dog comes into a new home, everything is scary. For the first 3 days, all they care about is, am I safe here? That's all they're thinking about. And even dogs that look like they've settled in very, very quickly, this will still be on their mind. So during those first 3 days, they're on high alert to absolutely everything, every smell and every sound, the way your TV sounds, the way your doorbell sounds, all of this is causing anxiety for them. And it's not until they go into the next phase of being a rescue dog, the next 3 weeks, that they actually start to realize they are safe, and they start to establish your routines and figure out what's normal and things like that. So this first month of their life being with you is really very stressful. So they will have used up a lot of their spoons early on in the day too. So we have to really become good advocates for our dogs. If we are checking to see how they're getting on through the day, we need to look for anxiety, we need to look for pain, we need to watch out for avoidance behaviors, anything that looks like your dog is trying to avoid something, if they're trying to withdraw from something, if they're not looking at it on purpose, if they are trying to move away from things. We shouldn't bring them out and try to make them confident, which is often what people do. We go, come on, darling, it's okay, everything's fine, and we push them to the front. If they're moving to the back, it's because they're anxious, and we need to respond better to that. So we need to find out basically what's making them anxious, what's making them sore, and how their hormones are affecting them and things like that, so that we can start to balance their spoons out for them. So when we are managing our own spoons, if you like, we can save some up for what we need later. We know what our day is going to look like for the whole day. We know we've got a meeting later, so we can take lots of breaks, and we can make sure that we only do light work in advance of that meeting. So we're saving resources so that we can cope with that meeting. Dogs can't do this, so we have to manage their spoons for them. We need to know what's happening throughout their day and what is expected, so we can manage all of their resources and balance their day out for them, so that they can cope with everything that we want to throw at them for that day. But before we do that, what we can do is we can create a predictable routine for our dogs. So when we feed them at set times, walk them at set times, and play with them at set times, we settle at set times, we have naps at set times, things like that, the day becomes really predictable for a dog. So actually, when that happens, they can actually start to manage some of their own spoons. And you'll see that sometimes if a dog can only cope with a certain amount of exercise, they might start refusing a walk, maybe in the afternoon. So we'll start to see refusal behaviors. Maybe they refuse to put their harness on, and things like that. So this could be their way of telling us that they are saving resources for what's coming later. When your routine is predictable enough for your dog, then they will know what's coming up later with confidence, and they can start to manage their own resources a little bit. So having a predictable routine will help, but the rest of it really is just on us. So we need to plan their day, we need to know what's coming, and we need to manage those resources better for them. So if we know we're going to go out later on and start working on their reactive behaviour, maybe we're going to go out at 3 o'clock for a training session, then in the morning time, we shouldn't leave them on their own, because leaving them on their own uses up a lot of their spoons. And we don't want them to use all their spoons on being left alone. We want them to have enough spoons so that we can do our training walk with them. The last thing we need them to do is to shut down in the middle of this training walk. Maybe we're going to take them to the groomers later, so we don't take a long walk in advance of the groomers. Or perhaps we know that we're going to have a training class on a Thursday night, so on a Thursday afternoon we schedule a nice quiet nap time before the class, so that we've replenished a few of those spoons. So managing their day, managing their routine, things like that is really important, so we're spreading out the burden throughout the day. So what happens when your dog is running out of spoons? Well, in people, then tasks start to become impossible. If you've spent all day at work, you've had a busy day, you've had to walk home, things like that, then by the time you get home, it might feel impossible even to make simple decisions about what you're going to have for dinner. Maybe cooking becomes hard to do, a shower looks impossible. So the body kind of just crashes and becomes overwhelmed. And it doesn't matter whether this is physical spoons or emotional spoons. Either way, this kind of stuff becomes really, really challenging. Now, you can borrow spoons from the next day. So if you're on a day out, for example, or you've taken a long walk, or you're on holiday, things like that, you might push yourself one day. But people that have mental health or chronic illness will know that this will have a big impact on them the next day. So very often they'll have a great day out, they'll exhaust themselves, and the next day they'll spend it mostly just in bed or in front of the TV or something like that, because they've used up all the spoons and they have nothing left for basic stuff that they really need. So they know they can plan this into their routine. And the same can happen for dogs. If you push them one day, you might well get them the end of the day and they'll have borrowed a few spoons from the next day, but the next day is just a write-off because they just have no resources left to cope with the stuff that's coming the next day. So you could borrow spoons from tomorrow, but that's not ideal because it has an impact then on tomorrow. You can replenish your spoons. So self-care, breaks, relieving tiredness, that kind of stuff can help in dogs. This might look like having extra naps. It might look like doing their absolute favorite thing. So if they really love to chase a ball or play with their tug toy, you might do a bit of that with them. It might look like a sniffing activity, actually sniffing and searching for things, not just smelling things, but actually searching for things is quite a relaxing activity in dogs. And it's quite tiring in a good way, but it can help undo stresses and anxieties and things like that. So we're looking for ways that your dog can just unwind and not experience the kinds of things that make them stressed. So it might be a quiet room with the curtains closed so they can't see things outside. Maybe there's music on so they can't hear things. So all they have to worry about now is just drifting off and being bored and having a nice little nap. So that will really help to replenish some lost spoons if you get an opportunity for that. Another thing you can do with your spoons is you could build up extra spoons. So building up resilience with your dog, you do this by building trust and advocating for them as often as possible. So your dog feels like they can rely on you when you're out and about doing things. If the dog feels like they're becoming stressed and you respond to that and you help them and you take them away from things that are stressing them or you solve those problems for them, that builds that trust, which then adds resilience. Any kind of positive training will also help with that. And clicker training has multiple benefits. It helps with all of that stuff, the trust and resilience. It builds confidence and it helps you achieve your goals in terms of your behavior and training as well really, really quickly. So there's loads of extra benefits to clicker training. So check that out. I do videos about all of the benefits of clicker training, and there's way more than most people think there is. So check those out when you finish watching this video. We can also manage their spoons by not using spoons up unnecessarily. So we can look at all of their behavior as a whole. Often when I go and visit people and they're struggling with the dog's behavior, they might be struggling perhaps with the dog barking at the front door, but the dog might also bark territorially in the garden, but maybe they don't mind that and they can see some benefit to that. But actually that's really stressful for your dog and that uses up an awful lot of spoons. A dog might have separation anxiety and might not be coping very well when they're on their own, but people may be able to manage that better. But if your dog's not coping on their own, then there's a lack of resilience and a lack of confidence in terms of being by themselves. So that's a problem. And if that exists, then that also could be taking up a lot of spoons that you want to use to actually work on the problems that you're struggling with. So if you've got a reactive dog, but you spent the morning with them being by themselves, then they're going to have no energy left to work in the afternoon on their reactive behavior problems. So you're going to struggle with that. You're going to find them unpredictable and you're going to find that training very frustrating. It's going to be frustrating for the dog as well. And you'll come away feeling like nothing's working for them. So working on all problems, all anxieties, all frustrations, and helping a dog to feel that the day is managed so there's not unnecessary anxiety and frustration throughout the day can really help them retain a few of their spoons for when you need them the most, whenever you're doing your actual training with them. And I think this is really why dogs feel unpredictable sometimes. Whether they really do have a set of spoons or not is possibly up for debate. But I think the basic principle is there, that just like humans, dogs start off with the same amount of emotional energy and physical energy. And if they're struggling in some areas, then those resources are going to be limited. And if we use them up in all the wrong places and we don't replenish them enough and we don't top them up enough, then our dog is not going to have the energy they need to do the things that we really need them to do. And once that energy is gone, they're going to become frustrated, they're going to become overwhelmed, they're going to become exhausted and anxious. And it means that their behaviour isn't going to be what we expected, because we know normally they do get on with dogs in the park. But on this day, they spent the whole morning barking at people that went past their back gate. They had multiple visitors to the house with parcels and things like that. And they were on their own for a couple of hours while you nipped to the shop. Then you came home, rushed them out the door to go for their walks. And by now, they're just exhausted emotionally, and they're now not coping with dogs. So rather than feeling empowered with stuff they would normally be fine with, now they've become snappy and irritable. And whether there are spoons or not, it does exist in dogs, this energy that they have in a day, and I see it loads. Hopefully that's been helpful. Check out those videos on clicker training, because they are great for building up resilience and trust, positive training, and loads more. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now. Bye bye.